Hi everybody, my name is Alex and this is Godsky podcast, episode 8. As you guessed it, of course I'm gonna call it the anniversary episode. Thank you for everyone who's following me on any media, maybe social media, which is I'm not really care, but I'm really glad if people will follow me on Spotify or Apple Podcast. I actually fixed my Google Podcast link. You can join in every possible way to be updated. And thank you coming back to my podcast. So today, maybe if you can spot the difference, my microphone sounds different. I'm not really sure if it's for better or for the worse, but I had to reinstall my system and the old setting was wiped. At some point, I improved my microphone quality, and I was really psyched about it to record it. But before the time I recorded, something got wrong, and I was struggling a lot to improve the quality of the microphone. And I'm always gonna look up for new ways to improve it. And today, not taking too much, it's not too much frustration, I hope, but today I really have a great day. Today was a really pretty stoked surfing session. All the coast in Israel was stoked, and people came out to one of the greatest swells ever came out in Israel. The quality of waves and the swell itself and the height was one of the craziest I ever seen. It was the real test for me to my endurance, to my level of surfing. And actually there was a lot of place to be improved, to be honest. I was thinking that I'm improving fast enough, but not actually not. But there's not much of opportunities to test myself in that type of that level of surfing. So uh, I was in the water for 4 hours. I was still ready to keep going, and even though I was kind of tired, which is not the best type of surfing. If you're too tired, you might start making mistakes. But I was too psyched on adrenaline, and that experience kind of new for me to feel that the heavy waves like crashing in front of me, and you're really feeling that they see that how small you in front of this big giant, and it's a humbling experience. And for me it's kind of a sort of new experience. And of course it wasn't without some little injuries, but nothing too serious, nothing too serious even to uh, stop me to come out tomorrow. So tomorrow there's a forecast to be even more challenging waves, and I'm really looking forward into it. But it was really real fun to be out there, to be again in with the people around you, to be in sort of community, to see all these real smiles after surfing. It's something that you really appreciate it. People are genuinely happy after the session, happy to even see the people were like, like they were outside, or even before surfing, and after they were seeing the waves, they're like, like the cheering and then heckling about the waves. That was fun experience. And yeah, something that I always like to come back and experience that. And person to person experience today, it's a necessity, and also some sort of royalty to get this. So I was recently just for example, I have had an interesting small talk with the taxi driver. So I'm dropping to the taxi. and I'm not, not person that I think it's sort of, if you can give somebody a good conversation, it's sort of a gift that you can give. So I was sitting with the taxi driver. Of course, I started a small talk here and there, and I'm saying, what do you feel like? How you look into this COVID situation right now? What do you think it's gonna be? Can we come back to all the old ways? So he's saying he's a little bit doubt about it, and he said like he's concerned about the children not coming back to the schools, and for kids are happy to be in the front of the screen right now and not to study, when it's not a really worked model of study online. There's it's a work in progress right now, and the progress not really moving with the senior teachers. But I actually said that it might be for better, because the classrooms, I give him a little fun fact that I found out. The classrooms were built, um, the way that it's built are not optimal at all to study like 30 kids. You actually cannot just shove 30 kids in one room and expect them to have a great or great, simply just by the sound problem. The sound is real problem in the classroom. You can basically test it and see how hard for children on the last, like behind the last desk, to hear the teacher, and usually they're not even hear them. They hear like 40-30% what they are saying. And of course, first of all, it's much more mental for them to do that, to concentrate on a lecture. It's much more less optimal to study like that. So basically, you cannot. That's what I said to the taxi driver. That's why you can hear that we see the people who are problematic. Like people who's like not really like to study. They're sitting on the last desks, and he said, it's actually not true, because I was a student in the last desk, and I was pretty good at my disciplines. And I was like, oh, okay, but you probably been taking a lot of notes. He's like, nah, I never took notes. I was like copying from other people. And I'm sitting a little bit confused. He's proving the fact that was announced to him about the that study that showed his problem, why he was a bad student. He's saying to me he was a great student, and at the same time he gives me all the facts about his studying, that he was actually the bad one. And of course, you're a taxi driver. Come on, like if you've been good at studying, you'll not be in this position. And not to disrespect taxi driver, but actually have a little respect to them. But they at some point, kids now are sitting there talking about they're having a small classes, and have a small they call it capsules. I'm not sure what sort of what the solution they're looking out for that. But online it's not a real solution, to be honest. When you study online, you actually having that problem that the voice over IP, as I call it's like the protocol, which is sending the packets of the sound of the voice, or it's the calls, or for like Skype calls, or for the Zoom calls. It's optimized to have optimized for traffic. Basically, if it's gonna send all the quality sound, it's not gonna handle the amount of data it's sending. There's a limitations of the internet cables. So what the internet providers made, they actually made the protocol voice over IP Basically, they're about the half splitting the packets that you sending. So basically, every time you have a conversation with somebody on the phone or via a web call, there you have a mental gymnastic. Basically, whenever you're hearing something, you actually need to feel to complete the information with your brain. So basically it wears heavy on your brain whenever you're hearing things over the internet protocols. So basically, to look at it, if you ever had the conversation on a mobile phone with somebody around like 50 minutes, 40 minutes, you can actually feel like, wow, I'm feeling exhausted. I remember myself working on as a call representative in an internet provider, and I had many calls every day, but nothing crazy. But every call was wearing me off. I had like 15-20 minutes conversation. I had to take a break. I had to make some coffee. I was really energized on a lot of caffeine, and actually, I think that's one of the today. The substances that people use a lot in a corporate world, the coffee, it's like the engine for this like fuel for these corporate engines for people to work over more hours or work more in more tense environment. So this is interesting. So things are changed, and really appreciate to have this little crowd gathering. I'm not saying I'm like really missing the live concert and not really had a lot of experience with it, but on the other hand, there is the progress moved everything that we've been trying, like everything the corporations trying to implement for years always was drawn back by the real experience, but now it's going to be a new way to experience. And for example, on the same time, the like if you look at the live concerts back then, like 10,000 people, 15,000 people around band, really drived and energized, and by a couple artists. But today you actually can having have those little parties of your local artist, have a live music with like 10 15 people max, and it's actually good a good environment for small names, for the starting act artist or unknown, but they're actually good. Like you can still find on the internet people are having like 300 views on their music videos or their live performances, and they're actually really good. Then you realize they're locals, and somebody that every town have those people who's really talented. You just need to find, and we're too lazy to find because their mainstream was always me feeding us what to hear and want to listen. And it's actually right now the recent podcast of Joe Rogan. It's former Google design ethics Tristan Harris, and they're talking about their new Netflix documentary that I gonna watch it for sure, which calls The Social Dilemma. It's basically they're talking about all the drawbacks, all the little tricks that corporations today using to have your attention span. Basically, they're talking about the attention economy. Companies today are not they're not fighting over they're not having real fight about platforms. They really have a real fight over your attention. So what's interesting that everyone can fall into this trick. Everyone can. In a recent episode, I was talking about why I'm not watching the Netflix, and that's one of the proofs for me that maybe if I have like I'm not talking about that, like having a right now I'm really excited to see this documentary, but it's not gonna put me on a bench watching the 15 other documentaries, right? But the series actually having this tendency to draw your attention for hours. You're thinking you can control this, but actually it's hard. The advertisement are they're making real progress now, and they have tools to take your attention. So one of the, in my opinion, another Joe Rogan recent guest being Kanye West, and that's one of the interesting discoveries for me. He's a talented and really, you can say successful artist, but at the same time, Rogan asked him a simple question: "What's your day looks like?" And he's been a little bit sweaty. He said, like, I'm picking up my kids and whatever goes. And on the podcast itself, everything he was like given a lot of Netflix references, and then you realize the guy is like just sitting and bench watching all the time, and he's like creating his reality and his perception from this series. So I was kind of surprised to realize, like, wow, even he fell into this rabbit hole of bench watching, the rabbit hole of attention losing. And there's a lot of people who fall into it, so don't take their authority about what you should do. I really suggest to you to. I'm actually, me personally, I have a bench listening. Whenever I discover a new podcast, I'm a little bit obsessed by it. I have at least 3 or 4 episodes, but it's not. To be honest, yes, it's actually. I'm not gonna say it's not the same as on Netflix, okay? Because the podcast itself takes my attention, but sometimes I can have spare attention if I'm taking if I'm on a way to on a bus, or if I'm on a. But it's the same, right? The same. So even having your attention free from everything, it's really important practice. So for me myself, I gotta not to give excuses and really free up my mind much more often. And of course, you'll feel a little bit like you're missing out. You're like, oh man, there's so many great podcasts around. But let's talk about, we're talking about attention economy. Everyone who's left big companies right now, like a Facebook. There was like one of the Facebook creators, one of the right now I'm listening to this Tristan Harris, who is like ex Google worker. They're all like sort of coming out of the box. They're like, we actually concerned by the technology we made. We're not really ready, prepared for it. And there's a really nice example he gave. He actually said that that there's no CEO who will allow a CEO of a tech company who will allow their kids to have a social network around them. They're not allow them to be on this stuff. And this is the great example. Basically, if you like ask a doctor, like you give me right now the medicine, right? Are you going, if at some point will you give it to your kids? And if he say to you, of course I'll never do that, then you realize it's not type of medicine you want to hop in, which is interesting. But there's a big tech right now, the big tech sector, that we're like opening our eyes on them, having a lot of conspiracy over them and everything. But what about big pharma? Why there is no, like, if we talk about big pharma and the way everybody's talking about how they making the bad thing, like the pills they are make are they're not really working. There's a funny kind of say there's a silver bullet medicine, which is like targets exactly disease, which is like absolute nonsense. like the guy is like read out some article and talking about this as like real like no like a back thought. And so why there's no big pharma, like, coming out of the box? Why there's nobody talking about for, like, I was working on Pfizer, and we had a research, and like, why is that? Why is like big tech companies of workers are coming out and give you real facts that this is not stuff not good to you? But we're not really here the big pharma coming out of the box and saying stuff like that, which is makes me like think, is there any like pharmacy conspiracy? I know there's a lot of I've seen in my like in I've seen the real practice of pharmaceuticals to chase new medicine. It's actually for them it's much better to make you more healthy. To be honest, of course, if you're gonna be rich and popular, you will receive much more better cure. But of course, it's like a in a like with the food, right? If you have a money and time, you will, of course, you will invest in a diet better. So, but they're not gonna give that cure to somebody that works only for elites. There's no only elites cure. There is, of course, there is experimental medicine in many studies, and sometimes actually I've heard like a first-hand experience that sometimes the experimental cure it's actually was working on some person, and the other person who didn't came like it's a limited places, and the people who did not get this experimental, they actually slowly having and all the uh, bad side effects of the disease. But it's all about the luck in your life, and sometimes you're running out of it. But a little bit sad cases to see people like that. But in other cases we see the good ones, those who made it, those who had this full cured. And I'm not into defending any pharmacy company. I'm not getting paid or promoting it. I'm just thinking about outside of the box, right? I'm thinking about people who just like, if there is a conspiracy for that, there is gonna be a conspiracy for that. Actually, really respected people in my eyes are talking about too much conspiracies, right? So because they have a really good geopolitics view on the things, and they're really academic ones. But as they have this sort of proof that there is a conspiracies in the politics, but from that point they're gonna put conspiracy on everything. Talking about the conspiracy, a lot of Alex Jones that had his comeback at the Joe Rogan Experience also had his conspiracies a little bit debunked. At the same time, his conspiracy is being proven too, which that's interesting. I had a lot of fun to listen to this 3 hour podcast. I'm thinking there's not enough. There gotta be like much more time to give him. And I really like the dynamic of this type of podcast. The he's really having that passion. That's what I'm saying. One of the things I was thinking about my podcast, it's I really not showing too much passion about me giving you like the life changing experiences, like life changes, I changing ideas. I sort of believe that if I just travel a bunch of this stuff, maybe you will pick up some grains and take at least one idea from the any podcast that I previously had. Actually like feel accomplished by it. But there's the people who so like burning with the passion for changing something in their ideas, like the changing people around them and the world around them, that you been fascinated by it. So basically what I'm saying, it's not like my podcast missing substance. My podcast is missing that passion to for the listeners. And it's really interesting where I should take, I'm thinking I can contribute by my talks to people who's listening, just to give the even like give a little rundown about the podcast I was listening, and suggest you to have this judge yourself. But but it's sort of feeling like to be that attention craving, that can you please watch something that I was passionate about. That's why I'm not trying to push on you, push on my listeners ideas, push on you ideas that you should watch it, like, or you have to watch it. I just, for example, right now I'm sharing that I'm gonna watch Social Dilemma, which is really interesting for me to share it, because it's a that will unlock something in our life to make it better. But I'm not gonna convince you or sell you that idea. People having like 3 hours conversation about their product. Basically, people who was coming up to GRE, the Joe Rogan podcast, they have basically have product in their hands. And of course, as a great salesman, you make so much sweet talk around your topic, so much sweet talk about how much important this is conversation right now, and you gotta be focused on it, and you gotta take it really seriously. But that's my point. Don't take everything serious. For example, philosophy. Okay, there's the people who's like they're the professional philosophers, whatever that means, right? They're philosophers, and they trying to convince you that philosophy is actually important on a global scale as economy or politics or other disciplines like tech. But philosophy, it's not the tool was made for to be serious. Philosophy, it's a thought experiment to have fun. Basically, if you take philosophy too much serious, you can get to topics so choking and so toxic to listen to, that you won't have fun. And that's take the whole point of the idea of philosophy. Back in ancient Greece, people were sitting drinking their after evening wine, and being having not too much to do. So basically, what they did, they created this tool to have a conversation, or have this thought experiments, or having that sort of debates. So this is like sort of like their own Netflix series that they've made. So it will make you come back, basically, not to miss out on the gatherings, because what's next, what they're gonna talk about today. So Socrates and Plato, the Aristotle, they all been in that level of uh, having fun, having fun destroying their opponents by logic. And actually, the word the logic were being created there as a tool to have a debate. It's not tool to have a some like, it's not tool, it's logic, it's not universal tool, it's just a tool to having a conversation, or have a debate, or create something like a logic of, for example, as a calculus, or having something like a computer was is made by logic. But it's nothing more, nothing less. It's not a it's not a life making tool, right? It's not fire that you gotta cook on it. It's more like a salt or pepper. Whenever you're preparing meal, it's nice to have salt and pepper, right? To blend, make taste better. It's made just for this purpose. And people give that serious talk around you, and you're really, it's hard to take people seriously when you see all these flaws. And see the flaws, it's fun. See your own flaws, and whenever you recognize them, you can recognize the same in others, and then you can, you know, take yourself, like, perspective wise, take yourself back and recalculate yourself and look at it from the other perspective. And this is the things that people who take themselves too much serious are missing, to recognize this, to change their view over themselves. For example, back then people were talking about there was a days that were respected people not for their physical abilities, but more for their for basically mental abilities. For example, in more ancient days, if you could warrior as like a professional warrior, we've been less respected than a merchant. To be a merchant, it's actually like, you know, you're creating something with your intellect, like you're intellectual, and you can create a job, or you can create move push project, doesn't matter what type of project or what type of that. But the action itself of creating something with your mind was really respected by people around you. And more and more, it's actually, you can see it's changing from time to time. Back then, the warriors were less respected, and then they had their rise of fame, and then they gone down again. Today, of course, let's say artists are less respected than technology people. If you're more tech oriented, you will have much more chances to find new job. But if you're like a more oriented to even philosophy now, you're not gonna take it as your profession to be philosopher. You know, it's like only people who like get to some point of academics can stay there in this field. But wake up one day and say, I'm gonna change my occupation to philosopher, it's actually impossible. What's interesting, I was listening about the idea of um basically it's like a rabbit hole of information that takes your attention. One of the things that I stumbled about a podcast called The Rabbit Hole, with the production quality and the soundtrack and the really really good sound editing, like professional work. It's like actually made it's like investigation by New York Times, which is interesting, like new format of medium. For me it was like, oh my god, I will never ever, like, in my life I won't take the New York Times paper, right? But right now I'm listening to their investigation work, just because they picked the right medium for me, because I would like to listen. And it's interesting, they had that conversation with the YouTube CEO and the people who had that journey of a YouTube rabbit hole, like the deep corners of the internet. And it's actually what happened in like previous United States elections, where like the election was like sort of like the public opinion were swayed a lot of by social media, and a lot of by even the the people who was like famous on YouTube. They've been really uh, they've been dismissed by big media, and this is their problem. Sometimes elites don't see the simple folks, and this is the mistake. It's like common, like that's the problem. We're not really looking back to the history, and to look back to the history, there was interesting the revolution of in China, ancient China. They had that revolution of people who start to believe in a new emperor. I think I'm gonna make a lot. The Chinese names of empires are a little bit confusing, but let's say the previous emperor was like not holding enough The like it was like hard ages, and the simple folks were like suffering a lot, until there is a like group of people who created myth of like a religious myth, sort of cult, that that was spreading a word that there is a like a yellow emperor who's like being chosen by the sky, and the great Lao Tzu was speaking from him from the like like in person, which like Lao Tzu was like dead back then, but that was like basically was like religious group who was like start to gain a lot of the traction, like political traction, and the elites, Chinese elites, were like dismissing that all this talk about Lao Tzu and everything, because in their opinion was just like simple folk have basically religion in their eyes was just like something like irrational in a not having no have no value in people's life. They were really dismissive about the religions. At some point they actually had revolution because of the simple folk like start to follow in more and more by this yellow flags that they were talking about the new sun emperor who will coming up to for own salvation, and that's basically like just destroyed the empire by simple folks, simple people who became really religiously obsessed by this change. And listening to this history podcast are actually, in my opinion, it's one of the like recreational process for me to change my opinion about things around me. And there's actually one of the interesting things that back then I was like back in 2016 I was in the United States, and I really like their open heart, you can say it's like a simple fall, but in my opinion that's like what makes the charm of the Americans, that they have had this like openness. They've been really open to strangers or immigrants, and I think it's back right now. It's like 2020. It's completely different type of Americans we have. I'm a really, I'd be concerned like to like like you are thinking to stay there, but I have a opinion that it's changed. They too much involved in politics now. Everyone after last late elections, they're like really into it, and the Facebook and the Twitter, all it gives like sucks in everybody into this like global process that happening right now with this politicians. So I think it's gonna be a global change of people mindset around them. They'll be too suspicious to others. People will start close more the doors than open them down, until maybe something will change. We'll see how we'll see how it's gonna work, because the social media today, it's a tool that nobody were like prepared to handle it. And yeah, and to be immigrant, it's interesting here, like in Israel, to be an immigrant, that you've been a little bit mocked by local people, because for them your culture is not completely different, but let's say they're more like east oriented culture, and you're like westerner, and even that you like in their eyes you're like the lowest of them, because like let's say Russians are like in their opinion like lowest westerners, and they usually have like mock your accent or your lifestyle, or even can mock your like clothes style. But to be honest, it's like the whole country was built here, that the whole land was built on immigrants, and year after year I see new and new immigrants coming up here to work on this like low positions, and having the struggle and can really surviving in this new environment, and they adapt as real like adaptive type. They're not have no time to complain. They're trying to survive in a new environment. At the same time, they get mocked by and disrespected by the locals, which is like really weird. And if you take one of the local folks here and just like for example throw them to Russia, right? I mean, it's not gonna be too long. Like I'd say, in the first 24 hours, he'll be mocked right on the street, and he'll be strapped down to the pants. And if they actually have a really expensive pants here, so he will stay without pants. On the second day, he'll be probably be catched by somebody and took to some rural area in Russia and be just like slave, like slave, modern slave. And I think by the day 5, he will really start to recollect his thoughts about the world he's living in, because modern like Israelis having it so much easy in their lives, and sometimes you can see that any struggle in life, it's just became like hysterical, because it's like a spoiled kids that yelling and shouting, and it's like that's not fair, and I should receive more. Why is that? Why you're not giving me this service? Like, excuse me. Like, there's a interesting sentence that servicing it's a royalty that you receive. Royalty, is that the right word? That basically like to serve somebody, it's it's a not given. It's like you really gotta respect that. And it's actually here at some point you're like saying, nah, it's the worst. To serve here somebody, give a customer service in Israel, it's one of the worst. And everyone is saying that, which is funny. Like immigrants and locals, nobody likes your customers, but I've seen worse. But yeah, that's the interesting times and places we live in. I really appreciate it. I appreciate I live here, especially on this Haifa coast, and I can go surf and have this privilege. In my opinion, that's a privilege I have, and I'm like everything I've paid, like I put in my time here in the army, and my time here in servicing in the low jobs. But to get to this point, to have this privilege to serve, I really glad, and I really appreciate that. Yeah. So thank you for joining me on my another talk about stuff I really passionate about, and trying to ignite you. But be careful not to fall in this web of the rabbit hole of social media. This is the last talk point I want to give you for as a present for listening to me to the end. Be careful about social media you're using. Be careful not to build up your opinion over it. Maybe use it as a necessity, and I even like suggest people use the social media to manipulate opinion of your future boss, people who will hire you. They actually lurk this, so just create profile for them that look that you look the way they want to see you. But don't go too much crazy about it. Have a break for your mind, have a break for your thoughts, and let me know what you think. You can connect with me at my Twitter, Alex Godsky. You can shout out me, give me opinions and everything you'd like. I also got the godskypodcast.com website. And thank you for joining me. Have a good one. Bye.